All right, good morning. I'm going to talk through today. I've already done one video on this dialogue scene, which is part of Black Magic, a musical, and I'm on to this second scene. I've already done the bookies as a music video, and I'm on to the second scene, the breakdown, which is about a breakdown in a lift, and after this guy here has ordered 3 hookers and the whole shenanigans that happen through that. And I'm kind of halfway through, and I'll be honest, I already made this video yesterday, and I was going to call it Dialogue, where creatives go to die. But I cheered up a bit after a sleep last night, and yeah, yesterday I made the video and was like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm gonna park this and not do any more work on it, as in park comfy UI, and I'm done with it. It's over. I've had enough." But after I slept on it and had a little think, I was reminded that we're in a pioneering arena, you know. This is not something anyone else is really doing, not even Seed Dance. As far as I know, I'm not seeing people with Seed Dance doing multi-character conversations. They're using ways to bodge around it, or they're doing action scenes. They're not doing narrative driven by dialogue. And this is the holy grail of AI, and we're not there yet, and we really are not there yet. And to be honest, the most frustrating thing for me has been, I'll talk through it anyway, and you'll see. And the quality, it's just not getting the quality and not getting the cohesion. And I think at this point, it's really where I should probably call it dialogue, where the rubber meets the road, this one, because it's where you actually start having to do a lot of hard work to make it fucking look right. And even then, it doesn't look like, and excuse my language, but, you know, I'm feeling quite emotional about this because it's been a long journey. I've spent 24/7 the last year or more working on this, trying to get to this point where I drive dialogue, and I find, you know, I've been avoiding it because it's hard, and I've now got to it and it's hard. I hate hard work. It's just not I like being in the creative flow, and I certainly am not in the creative flow at this point with this, and it's become an issue because I've lost sight of what I'm working on. But after a night's sleep and a little think about it, I was like, well, just realign my approach. What I've been doing is trying to get every shot perfect, you know, trying to go, I'm doing the low quality one here at 480/192, and then that's taking 5 minutes, and look, they're Chinese, that's no good, but you know, at least they're talking, and I've got that working. So then I shove it through the next stage, which you should all know about by now. So that first stage is the I to V, second stage is the V to V. And once I shove it through there, you know, 20 minutes later, I've got something better, but it needs fixing and blah, 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 you know. So I'm getting about a shot a day finished, and there is no creative flow in that. And especially since I already know where I want it all to go, this is just chore, this is grind, and I'm not at my best when I'm doing grind work. So I had to remind myself of that, and reframe my perspective, which happened in the night while I was, you know, I wake in the night about 3 and sit and muse over things, and usually my best ideas come to me at about 3 in the morning, and that's just how it is. And I was kind of, well, reframe my approach. That is the solution here. So I woke up today, I went, right, scrap that video's out, do another video. And so getting back to the point, this is the breakdown scene. I've already covered in the previous video on dialogue up to this shot here, escorts arrive in the lobby. And what I'm gonna cover today is the next bunch, which will take us up to this scene in the lift where I threw my rattles out the pram and stormed off in disgust, because it's like, oh my God, have I got to change camera again? But yeah, you do have to, and that is the nature of this game. So without further ado, let's watch the video of where we've got up to, so where I've got up to so far, take it apart, and then I'll go through these shots and tell you how I've done them, why I've done them the way I've done, and how I'm gonna change my approach somewhat for the next set. There's quite a few left. So let's watch the video. Let's do that first.
Yay, hi. 3 of your finest ladies, please. Booking time? I don't know. What's the normal length time? Then an hour, I guess. Room 667. Yeah, sure. I'll meet them in the lobby with the money. Cash up front and safety first. I get it. No, of course I am not drunk. I'll get another drink, please.
Certainly, sir.
That?
That's the drunk express who won £1 million on a horse race.
Oh yes, I heard about him.
Hi there.
He's drunk, the asshole.
But you aren't high half the time?
Shut up, bitch!
I may have had a couple of drinks. I was nervous.
God damn it.
Someone was stuck in here for an hour yesterday.
But I'm not fucking him in the lift, that's for sure.
Don't matter, we are still on the clock. So pay up, mister. You can have a little play with my titties once I see some cash.
Can we start the clock once we get to my room?
Shit don't work that way, pal. The clock never stops. Cash now, or you are going to be stuck in a lift with 3 pissed off hookers. Good luck with that.
Yeah, maybe you can ask the agency for a refund.
Damn, it's hot in here. I could do with a drink. I don't feel so good.
Okay, so watching that in the cold light of day, after a good sleep and, reframe of my thinking. Of course, if I posted that to Reddit, I'd be torn apart by hyenas. That's the game. But it's kind of not too bad at certain levels. Obviously, this is a work in progress. You have to keep that in mind when you're doing this stuff. And as a musician, I've learned over the years that not to destroy my work in fits of rage, which is the feeling I get quite often at the end of a creative process. And I'm starting to notice I get it with dialogue. And so I have to keep that contained, go away, go do something else, come back later. And any criticisms are valid. That's a part of the problem, because the audience will be merciless. And whenever you get reviews of films, the audience is merciless, and so they should be, really, because they've got high expectations. And of course, I have high expectations of my own work, and I'm sure you do too. And I think this is why no one is doing dialogue, because as soon as they try, it looks shit and they know it and they can't cope with it, so they give up. So everyone's making music videos and action scenes, and that's no good. That's not going to make movies. Not going to make good movies anyway, but I mean, nor am I at this rate. But yeah, so anyway, without me warbling on in the complaints department any further, let me walk you through from this shot onwards and discuss just what's been done and why. So this shot here, let's have a quick look at that. Okay, what things to say about this shot? What you'll notice is the first go round on these ladies, I've had a few goes on these ladies, as it were. So that was the 480 by 192. And at this stage, I was still working in my preferred aspect ratio, which is 480 by 192, which is 2.39 to 1. And, but in case I forget to mention it, when I get to the lift, I switch aspect ratios because I need 4 people in a tighter shot. So in the lift, I switch to 832 by 448, which is the traditional 16:9 aspect ratio, which we're all more familiar with. One drawback with that is it takes longer to render. So my 13 minutes to do a higher, to do the final push through an upscaler is at 16 minutes with this, which is an additional frustration that I've been running into. At first I thought something was wrong with my machine, and then I remembered I'd changed the aspect ratio. So watch out for catching yourself out with that. But anyway, back here I was still at 480, 192 was the first generation, and I make that low quality. I'm after structure. So what I'm really after, sorry about there's no mute yet on there. I've got to add one in. Yeah, so the very straightforward structure with the video. The camera was supposed to pan back, so it wasn't hard. The other thing to say is I've switched back to making a music video at this stage. The audio you're hearing there is what LTX gave me, and I was keeping it in for inspiration, but what I actually used in the end was one of my own tunes, and it just fit better. It's actually from another musical called The Other Side, but I might nick it for this because it just felt right, that song. It's about one of the few things that did feel right so far in this. Anyway, I got a good enough shot, and it was camera motion. I'm not using camera motion during dialogue scenes because it adds complexity to the issues you're already fighting, and I don't want to fight more issues. It's taking long enough. But yeah, going through my stages, this is my standard video creation method. So I will first make this, low quality. Actually, I might just try and switch that off. No, I can't. I'll first make this low quality version to get the structure, and then I'll shove that through LTX. Now what you'll notice with LTX, this is at 192.768. So this has gone through the full LTX workflow process. So it's the first version followed by the I to V version, followed by the 1A I to V version. It's in my workflows that I will share with you, and already have, but I'll share the updated ones. And 3A, which is the V to V, which is the main double upscaler. Now what I've included in there now, and I did use in this for this round to see, I think I did anyway, I might not even have put it in yet, but is a temporal upscaler. Let's just go and look at that momentarily while I'm talking about it. That is here, and basically what that does, and it's in the 3A V to V, after the first upscale, so the 480 gets shoved through whatever size I've made it at. I'll reduce it to 480 by whatever that size is on. In this case it's 16.9 because I'm working at 16.9 in the lift scene. In the other case it would have been 480 by 192. So it goes into this workflow reduced or fixed to that size, goes through the prompt, gets upscaled the first time, and now I've got this feature here which is temporal upscale, which will double the frame rate up to, so in my case I'm using 24 frames per second. It doubles it to 48 frames per second before shoving it through the second upsampler. And what that does, 50 frames per second, or 48 works just as well, pretty much as far as I could tell. 50 frames per second is a known trick for fixing LTX motion issues and blur and quality. So if you can do it, do it. But if you can't, like I can't because I haven't got the time, then only use it when you need it. And what this actually does is it upscales it temporarily. So with time, it upscales the time to doubles it. Then it shoves it through the last latent. But then before it gets to the end, I halve it again using this every nth frame. So every second frame I cut out, or either keep and cut out the rest. So I use that when I've got a hard job. Sorry, we've got a building site again, and they're off. Nothing, like, it was so loud yesterday as well, it was driving me mad. So that was partly why I was getting ranty about things. So I've got no excuse today yet. So where was I? Yeah, this shot. So this was the first shot, and actually that's quite high quality, and I'm wondering whether I think that was being the 52nd, but if you look at the eyes, well, it's actually really good quality. I'm wondering whether I'd already shoved it through a few things there. But usually at that distance, you won't get Usually at that distance, with LTX, the eyes will be breaking up and they won't really look right. I've used first frame, yeah, as you can see, it's starting to collapse, but whatever I've put it through, I'm actually curious now, but I know by the time I got to the 4th version, I shoved it through. I've shoved it through this workflow, which is the Humo WAN workflow, and with USDU Ultimate Upscaler and setting the tiles. I've even tried to rebuild this to make it faster using Claude, and it didn't work. It's on my GitHub, but don't use it. It makes everything look watery. Use it for effects if you want. Yeah, my conclusion was this can't be sped up. Whoever made it knows what they're doing. But yeah, I've switched from using Humo 1.7 or any of the WAN 1.3 models to using the 14. And yes, that takes 25 minutes to do a 241 frame, not 1920 on the long edge video. But my God, it's worth it. So yeah, I'm doing that. And as I'll talk about in a while, I was doing it just for the ones I need to do, and then I went, why am I doing it now? Do this at the end when I've got all the videos done and just fire them all through Humo with a batch process. So I'm going to do that later. I'm actually going to dial back even further, but I'll talk about that in a bit. So anyway, this was run through the Humo, and end result was not too bad. I mean, that first frame, that could look better, but that's, you know, probably my work is failing it there, because you need to get your first frames and your last frames, if you're doing them, absolutely spot on. And I'll be honest, I'm lazy about that. But you know, there's so much work goes into this. Let's have a quick look at that. Well, they're not too bad. They're pretty high resolution, and the shadows are there. The lighting's kind of wrong, but it's also kind of model. Given more time, I would have actually deliberately posed them like catwalk models before they started, like they do on runways. Give them about 1 second posing before they start their walk. But you know, it's extra work, isn't it? And everything of that nature gets done in here. So you can see what I've started doing. You know, I could go down rabbit holes with this stuff to talk to you. So I had to make these other shots, and all with the wrong person, get them out, and then I have to cut them in. And at this point I was experimenting with the best way to get these people pushed back into this scene. And you can see that I've nicked the scene itself originally from the Grand Trafalgar, somewhere in London probably, with marble flooring, and there's another one there. So you're making the background and then you're pushing these people into it. If you can find a photo where you've got the people posing how you want already, that's even more useful. When I changed angles to here, this was quite challenging. So I went from, I'm jumping ahead, but you know, it's all valid. This shot here, when I wanted a shot from above where he sits down. So it's going from any of these shots where I've got front on. As you can see here, I've changed the lighting, and I'll talk about that in a bit as well. But so I've gone from this shot to here. And the way I create that is I'll go and find an example online. Let me just show you how I built this. That's not really helping. Anyway, showing you this, what happened here was I started with that shot, which I downloaded from the internet, and it's awful resolution and terrible state of affairs. So I upscaled it once, and then not satisfied, I upscaled it again, but that didn't do anything more. So the next thing, I got rid of the guy there because I only needed 4 people, not 5. And then I tidied up all this to get it out by copying the opposite side and then blending it in. So this is Critter. Highly recommend it. It connects directly with Comfy UI when you've got Comfy UI running in the background. So what I did here was, once I had these 4 people, I'm on layers here, but what I do was go new layer from visible, so that can then get rid, you know, hide all those. Now got just that there, and then you can run these really funky little layer thing. So you've got all the control nets inside Ackley plugin with Critter, and these will down, if you run them, they'll automatically download from the internet, so just be aware of that. If you start going through each of them, you'll sit there waiting for it to finish. But I take the visible layer, set it there, and then you run that. You can watch it working in the background there in Comfy, because it's running Comfy commands, and voila, you got yourself poses. You know, how long will it take you to do that actually inside Comfy? So this thing is a beast of a tool. There's all sorts of things I use it for, depth maps, you know, and it's really useful. So I've now got the skeletons. So I've now got the skeletons I need for that shot. And then I'll save that out. What I do is I'll create this is another trick that I've now learned, is start with the background, make your background, because in this shot, back here, watch what happens to the bar. Moving about. And that was driving me nuts, because what I did stupidly was I got this guy in here, and then rather than take him out and then keep the background as a static thing which won't change, I thought, oh, I'll just swap him over because Klein's really good, and it is. And then I swapped everyone over, and you know, you can even see his arm where he sat in that chair behind, because that's how lazy I am. And you can see how these are just bodged in. But it's the first round, and you have to remember that, and that's what you're punching for. But I keep forgetting, and you know, there's his arm moving there. But yeah, my mistake was forgetting that things, once that arm moves down, there's going to be stuff behind there that needs to be addressed, and it will address it by moving them around. So, you know, this is why everything's moving about like magic back there. And by the time I got to the end of that shot, I was so angry I didn't want to look at it again. So yeah, spending one day on a shot, it can be really frustrating. So I hate to think what it's like if you're a professional working for a production company trying to do this shit. They'd be on your neck all the time. But anyway, so the way I did it was I'd pop them back in here, and I'm cutting them out of a shot where I've actually got them working, which I think was, oh, it's probably one of these where I pushed it back in and it didn't quite work. And then again, Critter's just brilliant. So what you can do is go back, not there, generate, add in a mask. So you see I'm on a single layer there where all these people are in there, and you go, oh look, segment. So I want upscale, I want these people segmented. Again, you can watch it working away there, and bang, what you've got now is this selection ability. So while you're on the control segment, you go, I want to select these two, and then you move focus to that layer. Oh, and you've got that selection mask. So, you know, it's not deadly accurate, but it's good enough to get you what you need quickly, and off you go. So, and then you do the same for, whoops. Yeah, that's where you learn the quirks of this, where you have to be in a control segment when you do it, and then it's selecting those segments, and then you switch to that underlay, and then you copy it, and blah, blah, blah. So I copied and pasted these people back in here. Position them how I wanted. Well, it looks like Britney Spears, that one, doesn't it? Moved them into the right position, upscaled it, exported it out. And here's another thing, another little trick I'm going to show you. This is selection tools. So, you know, you can select whatever. This is when I'm making my aspect ratio. So I know in here I'm working in 16:9 aspect ratio, and in terms of, let me just get rid of that for a moment, the ratio is actually, I believe, 1.78. That'll get you pretty close to it, and you can lock that in, and then I'll just go, there you go. As you can see, it's virtually slightly off, but it's good enough. Now I believe, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure my preferred is at 239 1 aspect ratio is that. So as you can see, that's hard work if I was working in that inside this lift, so I didn't. So I worked to the 2.5 is that aspect ratio, 239 to 1. But I've been working 16:9 in this because you get more, it just makes more sense. And I didn't know but until I looked into this, but you can actually switch. This is DaVinci Resolve, and you can switch between aspect ratios without too much issue. People won't mind. What you will run into is an issue as an editor is the bars. So like this is set at, the timeline itself is set at yeah, look at that, 1920 by 1080. So I believe that's 16:9 ratio, but I'm working in a different ratio, and that's what, oh, here you go. So it's giving me bars when I'm at 239:1. And you know, if you watch movies, certain movies, you'll see it sometimes jump to a different ratio. So there you go. Once 4 people are in, I'm trying to work at 16:9. So I hadn't even noticed I'd done that there, but it jumps to that. And it'll have a different emotional response. This is why they do it. And if you use square, like we used to watch movies on TV, they'd be 1:1 aspect ratio on old TVs. It's also a trick when, you know, I could have almost done it here, but I would have had to, I needed to use the thing that would give me the most face size in a shot. So that's why I went with 16:9 and not square. I mean, I might go to square for individual shots when it's 2 of them, because what square does can create in your face intimacy. It's a bit too close almost, because it makes it feel closer. So whereas widescreen out here feels really cinematic and large, yes, whereas this is like intimate and in your face. But yeah, I'm kind of getting lost off the point here, aren't I? So that was that shot. Very challenging, but not as challenging as I thought it was going to be, because what I do is I build the background first, then I restyle it, and as you can see, Klein. So all of that is done in Klein. Klein is absolutely brilliant for most things. And here you can see where what I've done next was add them in, and I've asked it to add in relighting. I'll give you all the relight and info in here, prompts that I'm finding that work. I've got a few more to add in there before I save this out. But you can use, I use 2 images in Klein quite often, and sometimes what I actually had working, which I should also show you, is where they enter the lift for the first time, which is an awful shot. I really don't like it. This shot, I hate this shot. It's just so anesthetically correct rather than cinematically correct. But you need to have faces facing the camera for LTX to keep hold of them. Otherwise, if you start with them looking away, then you're going to give yourself more work. But this was an interesting shot because this was where I first had to get 4 people in. And one of the things I struggled with was how far away are the people sat at the back compared to the people who stood at the back compared to the people who stood at the front, and what's the correct size given the space I'm in. So once again, what I did was I went off looking for 4 people in the lift, and these were not the 4 people in that lift. I then used this incline and went, put these 4 people in this lift space, and it did it. So here's my lift space, and I'll talk a bit more about the lift space in a second. Here's my lift space. Can you see that? You know, once I butchered it down, this was it. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll use that. Now, one thing to note where I got that from, let me just show you. I don't know why I've saved this here. You're going to recognize it. Recognize it? Yeah. Why did I use this scene? Well, firstly, because it was the first one I could remember where there was some shots of a lift and a lot of action went on in the lift. And I was going, well, how am I going to put 4 people in the lift and shoot it? So the obvious answer is go and find out what someone else did. And this is from the movie Drive. It's a great movie, one of my favourites actually. And the other thing this clued me up to when I was looking at it, I was going, look at that lighting. You can't even see the guy's face in there. So this is why this episode should really be called The Rubber Hits the Road, because we're now entering into the territory where you can have this dramatic lighting, or this amazingly dramatic lighting. There's a light coming down there, there's a light coming onto him, there's a light there, there's light here, there's light, strong light there, there's shadow here and the strong shadows and blah blah blah. Or you can be uncreatively shit like me, and actually I'm lying, that's the one where I fixed it. So yeah, you need to get these people in and it just looks terrible. So I was testing things, trying to get them in the scene, and then I tested them into another lift scene. Actually, that's the background for this lot. So I swapped them over, and then I was like, well, why are they... What I noticed about this was it relit them neatly, and they look like they're in that lift. You probably wouldn't know otherwise, except for this sort of white doming going on over his head. You'd probably go, yeah, they're in that lift, but they weren't. They were in this lift. And so I swapped my guys in, and I'm using Klein to do these swap-ins, and Klein first go swap them in. In fact, let me just load that up to prove this to you. Now, this was an interesting accidental exercise. I've got multi-images. Normally, my brain would go, well, put the lift in this shot and put the people you want being shoved into the lift in the second one, because you want the structure. What comes out at the end will be sized based on this aspect ratio, not this one. So that logically made sense to me, but I was in a rush. I was just testing it, so I went, I'll shove it in here. So I shoved them in there, and then I went, add the 4 people from image 1 into image 2. I mean, you couldn't get more simplistic than that. And bang, I could not believe it did all 4 people without a murmur, and picture perfect, you know, like minor blemish here, but I could fix that 5 seconds. But when I did it with mine, I wasn't getting those kind of results. It wasn't this good, and I was getting things going wrong, and I can't remember what I did. But anyway, that's when I started doing relighting as well, because then I switch it back to just this shot and go relight, as you can see here. Relight the image 1 to create a dramatic cinematic lighting with strong shadows and light differentiation. And that's what took me from there to there. Now, that's extreme, but you know what? Because I'd been working so long in such an aesthetic environment, I was glad of it. Low light kind of brought up a whole host of new thoughts to me. All right, now this is where I got into prompt relay, and you can go and look at the other videos about that, and I'll break down more info on the actual workflows in separate 5-minute videos at other times, because I just wanted to cover the overall picture. One of the main problems I was getting was the wrong people talking. Even if you define everything from blonde woman to white woman to dress to la la la, it'll still make the wrong person talk. And there's a lot of work, methods and tricks that I've kind of run into and in trying to fix that. But the other thing, a big thing I discovered, which is a pain in the arse, and this is again why the rubber is meeting the road here, is because when you get a shot where you switch between, I wanted to switch between these 2 shots. So I was going to start with this one.
He's drunk.
Sorry, no, I was going to start with this one.
He's drunk, the asshole.
Have her say that, and then switch to this one. So switching to this one.
He's drunk, the asshole.
But you aren't high half the time?
So one of the big problems I'm running into is positional continuity. I don't know what the word is for it, but I'm calling it that as of this moment. So positional continuity of 4 people is a bastard to get right and keep fighting with, and you get really tired of trying. Yeah, you see that cut? So there's no way I'm getting around this. There's so many things I'm going to have to go back and redo. His hair is wrong. The angle's great. The positioning's pretty good. But as soon as she turns her head back the other way, then it gives me problems. So
He's drunk, the asshole.
But you aren't high half the time?
And that just, something about the way she's speaking, it doesn't sit right in the audio either. And there's weird things going on with her legs there as well. So there's just so many things you have to look at to fix in order to be able to play this on Reddit and no one tear you apart. And, you know, that's not the aim of the game, but it's a really good litmus test to see how you're doing, is to post something to Reddit and go, oh, look at this, isn't it amazing? You'll soon find out what they think. Continuity, positional continuity on, and I really need to start learning. You know, this, again, the rubber hits the road. At this point, we're now into professional filmmaking techniques and how the hell they all do it. And I've got absolutely no idea. I have no skills in this at all. So I'm learning like a kindergarten child. And I'm sure videographers out there are going to, if you even call them that, they're going to be looking at this going, oh my God, this guy, what is he doing? But it's how you learn, and that's where we're at. But it's also iron shirt kung fu. You're going to have to practice it if you're following me down this path, because I'll be honest, as a creative, I'm getting moments where I want to throw my PC out the window and give up on the whole thing. I mean, I was talking to the missus last night and going, look, I'm going to park this for a year, come back when everything's better, because it's just not good enough. I'm not making, I don't think it's just me. I think it's the tools. Let's just run through these, because I want to talk a bit about what I'm planning to do next. So, you know, at this stage, I wasn't happy with this shot at all, and then I really hated it, and then I come upon this idea and I was like, well, it wasn't looking good in here either, and it was looking really anesthetic, and, you know, I tried wobbling the camera to make it feel like the lift's there, and then I tried this judder to make the lift break, and then I kind of went, well, why don't I have the lights go off? Like, obvious, really. I should have thought about it before. And as soon as I did that, and all I really did for that was, I mean, some things we're really blessed with, because, like, AI, imagine being a cameraman and a team, and they're going, oh, I don't like the lighting. Well, we're going to have to book that house again, that lift, and we're going to have to book the hotel, and we're going to have to make sure all these people are available, blah, 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 blah. But we just go, oh, shove it through Klein, tell it to relight it, boom, shadows are right, everything's right. You know, imagine having to try and create that setup on a film set. So in many ways, we've got absolute gold here, and it made me think, wow, I can relight the whole thing. So I'm going to do an exploration into that. And that was the start of my thinking on how I'm going to slightly change my approach, because what I've been doing in all cases, as you can see here, is go run it through the I to V, keep working on the prompt, get the structure. You know, once you got the structure, yeah, this one will do. And, you know, I've done 5 minutes each one, and then all the work. I'm halfway through the day and haven't even finished this shot. And then the next half of the day spent shoving it through 15 minutes every go, a bit longer. And then it's not working on the second sampler, and I have to shove it through again. And I'm getting up to this higher quality, but then this guy's face is wrong because I didn't start on a shot where they're in it properly. It's the wrong woman. Luckily, she's wearing the right clothes. Her clothes are changing. They go to the wrong positions in the lift, so I had to run it again. What's his hair doing? You know, a million things. Rather than bother myself with this stage, I'm going to switch just to this stage, get the thing done. And even at this low level, here it is, even at this low level 832486.
Can we start the clock once we get to my room?
You can see their lips moving, especially with the close-ups. And this is another reason why I'm not doing camera movement, because, and this is, I can get this done in 5 minutes. And even in that light, at 832448, you could watch that on TV. You wouldn't go, oh my God, it's awful pixelation. You'd actually probably pay attention to what she's saying. I don't know. It's the lighting. So there's a new trick as well where I'm like, well, this is why they're all making these movies with really low lighting, isn't it? It just disguises all the blemishes. So maybe that's, wonderful. This is great. So that's one trick that I've established here. But the other thing is, and this is another case where you run into revision blindness. But so I've done this shot and the next half of this shot really, and the next 4 or 5 shots in this lighting, and I've got to here and I'm sick of this lighting already and I want to change it. But a viewer is only going to see this for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 15 seconds at most, and it's going to be over because, I cut the bookends of most shots as I blend them in to each other. So you kind of got to watch out what you cull. The other thing I've noticed watching movies with a critical eye while thinking about what I'm doing is I'm rushing everything. And when I watch movies, they take their time, and that's where the emotion is. So that's another thing where I think I'm making mistakes, and I'm not really sure what to do about it, because it's the creative side of it where I begin with a great idea. I know exactly what I want out of this entire scene. I've known for years, ever since I wrote the stage play for it, the Black Magic, the musical. For years, literally years, I've known exactly what I want out of this scene. But once I started making it, it's taken me off somewhere else, and I'm not achieving the emotion I intended to achieve in the beginning, and that's confusing me a little bit. And I'm not sure how to drive it back there, because it's a mixture of everything. And I think this is where the creativity of filmmaking, again, the rubber hits the road, because if we don't have the skills and possibly the gift from God required to make a movie that enthralls the viewer, and I'm not sure many people have that skill, then can we conjure it somehow just by hard work? And I'm not sure we can. So this is, again, I hark back to the Ridley Scott situation where he made Gladiator 1, which is one of my favourite movies ever, and it's one of the most amazing films. I top of my list if anyone asks me. And then weirdly, Gladiator 2 is probably one of my most hated films, possibly consider it the worst ever made film, because he insulted himself by making it. But that's exactly the kind of stupid thing I'd do, and I acknowledge that. And it's I've had years as a musician, and the struggles of being a musician, which are many, and I won't go into any more here. But I've learned the experience of where creativity fails you, and where you no longer see that, but everyone else does. So, but this is one of the wonderful things about Reddit being full of vipers. And it really is. But you go and post your wonderful creation on Reddit, and you will soon hear all about the crap bits. They won't tell you the good bits. You'll get a few mumsy types who go, oh, good effort, here's a participation t-shirt. But you'll all get torn apart by hyenas, because that's what the world's like. So get used to it. That is the problem we're facing with creativity, a balance between dealing with the criticisms, especially with this stuff, dealing with the criticisms, which will be valid. You can't go, you can't do what Hollywood's currently doing, which is blame the audience, like for Star Wars failures, Star Trek, sorry, or whatever it is. I don't watch that stuff. But yeah, they're all blaming the audience. It's like, well, error 101, but there must be a reason why I do that. So you have to keep your eye on me doing that. And what did I just do? I blamed Reddit. Yeah, so I'm doing it already. But anyway, I'm digressing. There's only a few minutes left. I got up to here, and we've done these scenes, and look, you can see where I've changed here already. I'd had enough of this long wait getting it up to.
Can we start the clock once we get to my room?
There's a problem as well where it just looks really weird. They keep looking at the camera. They start looking at the camera. They end looking at the camera, and so originally my standard negative nodes were that. And now my standard negative nodes are that. Now here's something actually that I don't need anymore, but that's a good important thing to point out. When you start doing dialogue, you will run into a problem with audio, and what you'll start having, the audio, if you don't, I've talked about this before, and it's something I didn't mention before, but when you do your 10 seconds of audio for a 10-second shot, or however long your shot is, you need ambient sound in the background. And if you have the shot silence between the talking, between the moments of dialogue, if you have it silent at the very end, it'll fade the shot out visually, because it thinks it's the end of a shot and it's trying to be helpful. And even putting in fade out doesn't fix it. I'll take that out of there, it doesn't even do anything. The solution is make sure there's audio right the way through. And where it caught me out as well was I did a 10-second shot, and I gave it 10 seconds of audio, but the shot was in fact 10 seconds and 0.25 or something, and the audio didn't extend the full length, and so it faded it out. And it's, you know, a fade out is a clue that your audio is not long enough. There's not sound at the very going right to the end, and the only kind of sound you need, as I've discussed in the other video, is that just ambience. You don't want talking hidden in the background, because otherwise they'll all start talking, mouths will start moving, since you're trying to drive dialogue. 1,001 things I could tell you. I'm trying to keep to the salient points. So at this stage, I kind of had enough. You can see I'm starting to, the will to live is starting to fade. And, you know, admittedly, I know my habits, and I'm 2 weeks into this. I think I started this one on the 15th of May, and it's currently the, 3rd of June. So, yeah, I kind of had enough here, and I'm just using it low level. And this is a good example where I actually predicted, after seeing this shot, and I'm starting to go, I'm starting to think ahead now already. So I had this shot.
Can we start the clock once we get to my room?
Shit don't work that way, pal.
Yeah, so if you notice this weird staring at the camera, that's going to have to be cut out. So where does he go? Where does he stop doing it? Boom, there. So about 2 seconds in, before, so already going, I need a B-roll, I need cutaway, or whatever you call it, I don't know, I'm trying to sound professional now. But so the next shot, I went, well, all I need her doing in this shot is the bit at the end.
Yeah, maybe you can ask the agency for a refund.
You see that fade out? It's doing it.
For a refund.
There you go, see? That's exactly it. So you can hear the ambience. No one's talking, because there's no talking in the ambience. You hear me cut it, because I did all this.
Yeah, maybe.
I did all that in Audacity, so I dropped it in on the ambience, but my mistake was...
Maybe you can ask the agency for a refund.
So there's only like a millisecond or 1 second there, but it's silence. There's no ambience coming back in. Boom, it's fading it out. So yeah, unless you don't mind that, really keep an eye out on that. That'll be the reason for your fade in and fade outs. But the point of that was, I only really needed 2 seconds of her talking. So I thought, oh well, what I can do is mask, use that as a mask. So what I did, as you can see in here, this is DaVinci again. This is where you do all the editing, and you can see I've overlaid it, and I'm starting to do that more and more, where I'll overlay a bit of the scene. Not that one, but I'll overlay a bit of the scene. So we've got these guys in the lift, and then it switches to her. So that comes after, while he's talking.
Can we start the clock once we get to my room?
Shit don't work that way, pal.
I'm masking it with shots. So that's something I noticed, is I'm now, because of working on this, already starting to think ahead with shots. So I'm already starting to think like an editor or whatever. And that's really where we're headed with this at this stage. We're no longer just making AI, we're venturing into filmmaking territory, and there's going to be a hell of a lot to learn there, and we're going to do it badly at first, because, you know, these guys are professionals that make this, and that's what we're competing with, because all anyone's ever watched is professional films. So the expectation is going to be really high. Anyway, as you can see, I'm dropping the higher quality now. So from here onwards, there's a few things that I'm going to change in my process. The first thing I'm going to change is I'm going to just work strictly at the lower resolution. I'm not going to do the fancy one. 2 reasons. First reason is, once I get the structure, when you make your video at 832 by 448, you finally get your prompt, your complex prompt, be it in the prompt relay or in this one. You get it working. And here's a suggestion as well: if you're still not getting it working very well in prompt relay, take this bit out, drop it in here, shove it through just as a text thing. Don't forget all the prompt relay, and often it'll do it. Like, I'm actually finding getting too complex hinders what you're trying to achieve, and sometimes it's better to just go back to simplicity, rough out what you want, and AI will deal with it for you because it'll flow better in the AI's logic. And I'm actually finding that quite a bit. Simple often leads to more success, but you know, you have to adapt to what it gives you. But the point I was making here is, once you've got your result from there and you come into your next stage where you shove it through 2 samplers and you get it up to the highest quality you can get it, I was running into this problem where even if you use the same seed, and you can see I've started venturing into loads of new seeds here, but even if you use the same seed, when it goes to a different resolution especially, you'll get different results. And especially shoving dialogue mouth in, it started changing the people who were talking and was ignoring the prompt I'd already fixed and the seed I'd already established, and was just changing people out. And the fix was twofold. Firstly, in the first sampler, reduce it to 0.97 in the start value, which is effectively reducing the starting denoise to below 1. If you've got it at 1, it's going to strictly adhere to the prompt or what it thinks it wants to do with the prompt. If you start it lower, and it doesn't have to be like really low, only 0.97, I wouldn't even go lower than that at all. That will honour the video. Sorry, that will honour the video more, and the lip sync, any lip movement in the video more. And then when you get to the next sampler, even lower. So originally I had those settings in this sampler, the second sampler stage, and thanks to Nonsense and Hududud, or whatever his name is, on Discord, I tried, I think this was Nonsense one, 0.73, which is really super low. And honestly, there's absolutely no visual difference between that and that in the results with Euler Ancestral. There's no difference in speed either. But the point was, it wasn't then switching those people over to do the wrong person doing the talking, which it was at 0.9. So you need a much lower set on this one than you do on the first sampler. But that's going from 480 to 960 in the first sampler, and then 960 to 192 on the long edge in the second sampler. The other thing I've started doing is, first go round on this, I will save out of the first sampler to a video so I can check whether the mouth movement is all correct and it's working. So this is coming out of the first sampler being saved, but I'll also save it to a latent, because with a latent, it's not coming out to image space or pixel space. With the latent, it's saved in that space. So later I could go back and shove it through the second sampler using the latent, and I will have no degradation. It'll be almost like using the same workflow. So that's another trick I've added into the workflows here. I will share with you, and I only use it once, and then if I have to keep changing more things, because it'll tell me how far I got to. If I have to change more things, I'll either switch to a single sampler workflow with these settings, or I'll just park it and come back later. So before I went on that long meander, is what I'm going to do is change my approach slightly, and what I'm now going to do is go through all the rest at low resolution, decent quality, you know, decent lighting or otherwise, I don't care. I'm going to stick to low resolution to get the flow. And I should have done this before. I didn't really think, because I was, you know, punching for higher quality. But to get the flow, focus on the shots and activity. And once I've got that, then I'll go to higher quality, push it all through higher quality. But what I'll probably do is do that in batch processing, because it's just going to, one of the main things, I've talked about this so many times before, but there's a formula of time plus energy versus quality. And it is so true. And that is the formula we're working to here. And it's the one I'm running into right now, where it's taking so long and it's using so much energy that I'm actually losing the quality and I'm losing focus. So I have to try and gain ground again with the time and energy part. And I forgot in my tantrum yesterday, I kind of forgot, as I said right at the beginning, this is pioneering stuff. We're at the forefront of an emerging technology that's going to change the world. There's no doubt about that. And it's not there yet. And there's one other thing. The final thing I will say is, my biggest bugbear at the moment is changing camera position. So how do I get now, at the end of this shot, so I mean, here's the thing already. She's got the wrong trousers on. She's now in a wearing trousers. But I've now got the next shot has got to be from the side with him sat there and her stood there, these two out of frame and viewing a camera there, maybe even looking up at her. And, you know, ideally that would slowly track in as she's saying something or they're having a conversation together. And, you know, it's going to take me half a day to get there. And that's why it's so frustrating. So I've got to look at the two things I'm going to look at. Firstly is multiple person posing. And I did a lot of this last year with Cascadeur. So I've got to revisit that. But Cascadeur, one of the issues with Cascadeur is that it's I'll share links to some of this. This is old stuff, but yeah, last year I was doing it with Cascadeur to get these certain shots, and I've also done it with Blender. And there's another video on that. But they're slow processes, and it takes longer than I like. And I think I can do it with, I showed you the pose control. I mean, that's fast. I think I can do it with pose control, possibly with depth map as well. So I've got to work out, but I need the fastest way to move around these shots. But a new technology is coming out, and it's already in Comfy UI, and I'm going to have to now go and test it, is Gaussian splatting. And I've been waiting for that to come because I think it's probably going to be the more immediate solution for moving around shots. Because the other problem with these is I could blender these out as models and do all that and then change the camera angle there and even create camera movement. But as soon as these guys move to a new position, I've got to do it all again. So this really needs to be a much faster process. I need to find a much faster process for going, right, I need this person stood there, this person there, this person there, and the camera down here looking up. You know, I need a much faster way to move around scenes. And if I solve that, it's going to solve half the problems I've got at the moment, which are frustrating me. So there's plenty to look at, and hopefully by the time I get down to here and finally have this done, assuming I don't lose my mind and throw a massive wobbler and walk out, that'll be within a couple of weeks before I go on holiday, and I'll let you know how I've got to, where I've got to with it. So I could go into so much more detail about how I do all these things and what I did and why I did and why it's frustrating, but I'll leave it there. And hopefully that's a bit more positive than the video I made yesterday that was really rather sad. But, you know, new day, new dawn. We're pioneering out here. Let's not forget that. We're pioneering into new ground, and this especially tacky and crap and kindergarten as it looks. Who else is doing it? You know, if anyone else is out there doing it, I want to know about it, because maybe they've got tricks I need. Maybe I've got tricks they need. Let's share. That's another thing I'm finding with this community. Everyone needs to stop being a fucking tight ass about their workflows. You need to start sharing stuff more, because you're not the fucking only genius in the room. Share your workflows. Let's help each other get there, because we're trying to make movies here. At least I am. Anyway, that's me out. I'm done. See you later.